Welcome back, guys. We are here for Chapter 3 right now. Paul is looking at me like I'm nuts for speaking loud.
Screaming.
Oh, I have a speaking voice. What can I say?
Oh, God. Okay. Whatever.
People expect something from me, Hall. What can I say? I got a big mouth. People like to listen to it. So what we're going to be going over today is we are going to be going over Unit 3 or Chapter 3, which is all about the story of our Constitution. And we're going to be diving right into the Articles of Confederation right now.
Oh, yes. So, you have to understand that when it says the story of our Constitution, our first Constitution was not the U.S. Constitution. It was the Articles of Confederation. So that is what this whole chapter is about. And so we've got some vocabulary terms that you're going to actually see. So you've got the following words.
So you got state right here, which again, our vocab is at the top. You got Articles of Confederation. You got Confederation, Central, Foreign, Affairs, Confederation Congress, Sovereign, Revenue, Foreclose, Shays Rebellion, Debtors, Merchants, Militia, Preside, House of Representatives, Senate, Constitution, Veto, Compromise, Electoral College, and President.
Okay, so let's kind of start out with discussing about the Articles of Confederation. And again, keep in mind as a country, well, we weren't actually a country, but when the English came over to the 13 colonies, we were being ruled by England. And during that time, basically you had the king that had all the power. Okay. So when we finally created our own nation and said, okay, we're breaking away from England, we wanted something completely opposite of what we had with the king. And so we created this constitution called the Articles of Confederation. And the thing is, though, it made the states way too heavy. It gave the states pretty much all of the power. And if you go through this first big paragraph, it talks about how we were actually what was called a confederation. And what a confederation is where you have these states that decide that they're going to work together, somewhat like a country. And that's basically what they did.
Exactly. However, the big thing, though, is they also remained independent in a way too, though. They really had their own powers, and they both were responsible. Really, they all had their own governments, essentially.
Right. In fact, those states actually ran themselves like they were their own little countries. They were sovereign, meaning that they actually had the final authority. So again, in that paragraph, it's really talking about how each country or each state functioned as its own country.
Exactly. And I want to go into one word at the bottom of this paragraph. It's called Confederation Congress. Sorry, guys, I missed it right there. Confederation Congress. It's right here. And what this was the central government, which, as Ms. Hall has already very well pointed out, this was a very, very weak government, and it was very a loose association. But this is what the central government was called. Again, the Confederation Congress. And each state in the Confederation Congress, they all had one vote. And there were 13 at the time.
Right. And so now when we get down, you're going to see where it says weaknesses of the articles. Really, this is what the whole standard is based off of, what you're actually supposed to be learning. This document had a lot of issues. First off, Congress had no power to do the following. They couldn't tax. They couldn't create or raise its own troops. They couldn't oversee or regulate trade. They could not enforce laws, for one, because they didn't actually even have an executive branch. We didn't even have a court system that was really established. So there were a lot of flaws under this. Now, if you go through, now for us being under the Articles of Confederation, we realized, okay, we've got so many issues. What can we do to fix it? Here it says under the Articles of Confederation, it says once the Articles of Confederation were approved in 1781, the Continental Congress was replaced by the Confederation Congress. They were critical years when it was unclear whether the states would survive as independent democratic states. So basically, we functioned almost for 10 years with the Articles of Confederation, and there were just way too many issues.
And we even though you guys see this right here, talking about the accomplishments of this Confederation Congress, when you guys think of the Articles of Confederation, we want you to think of the weaknesses because there were so many problems with it. And we're about to go into an event that happened as a result of it. There's so many problems, though, it just didn't work.
Exactly. So the very last paragraph on this page talks about the serious problems. We had issues with Britain kind of staying in our backyard, not really willing to leave. We had economic issues after the war. We had to raise money. And basically the only way to do it was to raise taxes, which that was the whole reason why we backed away from Britain.
Exactly. And some states even refused to pay, which is pretty wild to think about. But because they didn't have that central government to enforce it, some states are like, I'm not going to do it.
Exactly. They were basically on a donation basis. So that was not very good. You had issues where people that fought in the Revolutionary War had not even been paid. And then you also had many people believing that, good grief, our own brand new country is becoming tyrannical. Our people, it's all becoming corrupt. So let's kind of take us down to the Shays Rebellion. And if you notice, is not apostrophe S, is S apostrophe, because his name was Daniel Shays.
I'd like to. So in Massachusetts, guys, as you guys see right here, there was an economic crisis because, again, they weren't raising money and didn't have a central government that was working together. Ultimately, people were having their lands taken back, especially farmers were hit especially hard by this. So again, right here, the debtors were coming and taking it back. So these struggling farmers, they were so ticked about this that they ultimately decided they were going to rebel. And they were ultimately going to be led by a man named Daniel Shay, I believe, right? Daniel
Shays, add that S.
Daniel Shays, excuse me. Daniel Shays. And the problem is we didn't have a central army that could put this rebellion down. And this rebellion had to be put down by the Massachusetts militia.
Thank goodness they were actually good and were actually able to stop it, because it would have been an issue. But what's interesting about this is that this rebellion was the main reason why they said, you know what, we really have to revisit the Articles of Confederation. We need to go ahead and have a convention. We need to go ahead and look at this document and see what we need to fix.
Exactly.
Well, here's the thing. They start getting into it, and then they start realizing that, you know what? There's so many holes in this that we just need to let it go and start over. And so basically that's where they get into, okay, let's go ahead and create a new constitution. But what are we going to do? And here's what the delegates actually agreed on. They said, okay, we can agree that our old constitution was 2 weeks, so we're getting rid of it. We can agree that we definitely want 3 branches, not just 2. We also agree that we want a bicameral legislature, meaning we've got 2 groups, Senate and House, that will actually be overseeing the making of laws.
Exactly. But at the same time, there were some disagreements that they had. Specifically, the smaller states wanted equal representation across the board. The larger states, they wanted to be based on our population.
Exactly.
Because, again, if you have more people living in the state, that means you're going to have more of a say in government if it's based on representation on population.
And then you had these little tiny states saying, but wait a minute, we're a state too. We want to be represented. So here's where they really had to compromise. You had your, to satisfy the small states, you basically gave everybody across the board 2 senators. That would be in Washington, D.C. To satisfy those large states that had the bigger population and felt that they needed to be represented in a larger number, they basically would be given the number of representatives based off the population.
And this is ultimately why it's called the House of Representatives, if you think about it, which is because it's representing the state's population, if you think about it.
Right. Now, when you go down, you'll see that little section called Electoral College. That is basically, we've always said, yes, really the people do elect. They elect the the president. But technically, if you really want to get down to it, what we're doing is we're actually voting for electors, and those electors will then go in and vote for the president. Okay. So, and how you get that number is each one of the states will basically take their number of senators and their number of House of Representatives, add that together, and that.
All right, guys. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video. We look forward to talking to you again.